Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I want to talk to you about the latest episode of the book of Boba Fett. It was called Chapter 4, of course. And it starts in flashback. We see Boba Fett approaching Jabba's palace on his bantha. And he wants to infiltrate it, but he really can't because he's by himself and there are a whole lot of guards. After a fireside meal, which he shares with the bantha, he goes, I guess, for a ride, and he comes across Fennec lying in the sand, dying from a gut shot. And at which point he takes her to the tech heads, I guess the mod people, and he pays them to install a bunch of tech in her torso to keep her from dying. Then when she wakes up and is like, what happened? He explains, and he says that he feels like the death of the Sand People, the tribe that he belonged to, was his fault, and he asks her to help him recover his ship from Jabba's palace. After they surveil the place from a distance, the palace, they send in a holo drone to get more detailed information. Boba Fett then releases his bantha, telling it that it can go, it's no longer in his service. And then he explains that after they reclaim his ship, his plan is to find his armor, kill Bib Fortuna, and replace him on the throne. So again, this is flashback. He hasn't done that yet. When Fennec is surprised that he'd want to do that he'd want to be a daimyo, he explains that he's tired of working for idiots that will, that every time will probably get him killed, and that he would have been content to stay a member of the Sand People tribe, but that, of course, was taken away from him. So he can't do that anymore. And it's interesting because at that point, she comes right out and says that him living with the Sand People has made him soft, which is funny because this is what the people who don't like the show have been saying. This is in Boba Fett. He was a ruthless killer. He was a massive badass. Now he's like some kind of milquetoast weenie guy. And so she comes right out and in the story sort of points out, hey, you're kind of, what is this? Your heart of gold period. And he says in reply, no, it didn't make me soft. It made me strong. You can only get so far without a tribe. And, that he now wants to take his shot at being someone that, has the power and has standing in the world, as opposed to just a guy who flits around doing the bidding of others, risking his own life, for money, yes, but not anything substantial. He's tired of doing that. So this is why he wants to pursue his new course. And he, at that point, says that he'd like her to be his partner. Following that, there was a great palace infiltration scene, which was followed by a great sequence of recapturing the ship, which, of course, has been renamed. I mean, it's just, you can't really describe it. There's gunplay, there's sneaking around, there's fighting with robots. It was very cool. And right after that, as soon as they get out of the palace with the ship, Boba's like, well, I have some scores to settle. And he goes to where the biker gang, the spike speeder gang that killed the Sand People are. And as they're riding along the desert, he gets the ship really up close behind them and obliterates the hell out of them. Pew, pew, pew. Bye-bye, speeder bike gang who killed my people. Gonski. Bye-bye, turned to dustata. And at that moment, I thought, anybody who thinks that Boba Fett isn't a badass anymore, yeah, they have to see this because he totally still is. Totally still is. He then, badass that he is, tries to lower his ship into the Sarlacc pit so that he can go retrieving his armor, which he assumes is in there because I guess he doesn't realize that the Jawas took it. And in the process, the Sarlacc pit almost pulls the ship in, but Fennec manages to drop that sonic bomb thing that we saw him use in The Mandalorian and kills the Sarlacc. Fett then goes into the pit, spelunking style, to retrieve the armor, but of course doesn't find it. And we see that this is where he got all messed up and why he's been in the back to tank so often during the first 3 episodes. But then we go forward into the present, And we learn that he no longer needs to use the Bacta tank. He's completely healed from his injuries related to his expedition into the Sarlacc pit, where there's all kinds of like stomach acid or whatever. And at that point, he goes to the club to show his face so that everyone knows he's not hiding after the attempt on his life. And he observes Chrysanthemum, which I've now learned how to pronounce, killing some dudes before offering him a job. He then has a meeting with the local crime lord underlings where he explains that they can either unite with him to help him take out the Picts before they take over, at which point he thinks they would take over the whole planet, not just Mos Espa, or they can stand aside while he does it himself. And when they ask what's to stop them from just killing him and taking over, he shows them the Rancor, which even Chrysanthemum kind of goes, oh yeah. After the crime lords depart from the meeting, Fett assures Fennec that though they're not really trustworthy, he doesn't think they're dumb enough to risk allowing the Pikes to take over the whole planet, because then they would just be screwed. She then asks him how much money they're working with, because they're going to need money to, have any kind of chance at building up what they need to fend off the Pikes. And he assures her that they have enough money, but are low on muscle. At which point she says, yeah, well, with enough money, you can buy all the muscle you need if you know where to look. If you can't tell, I thought this was a great episode. It really laid out everything we needed to know to understand his motivations for the way he's behaving, to explain the evolution that we, at this point, had only sort of seen that he had undergone by his actions. We didn't have any words to explain his thinking, and now we have that, and now it makes a great deal of sense, and I think it makes the character really cool. He basically says, yeah, this was my life before. I was, just going around, no, wasn't anchored by anything, didn't really have any kind of a life to speak of. I was a bounty hunter, always on the run, always looking over my shoulder. Don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to just exist. I want to make my mark on the world. I want to be a man of substance. I want to have something to show for everything I do. I want to make my mark on the world, my mark on the universe or the galaxy. And I think that just makes complete sense. That's a natural human feeling, and it makes sense. And I think it just adds dimension to the character. It doesn't take anything at all away from the character. So I just loved it. And of course, I loved the part where he blew away the guys that had killed the Sand People. It was just awesome sauce. Just a great episode. It really was a great episode. And I can't wait for next week. I will be back at that point, of course, with another review. Until then, I wish you peace and long life.